All right, what's going on, Sooner Nation? So Oklahoma, after a four-star wide receiver commit in Daniel Odom, potentially has more good news coming down the line. We've briefly recapped some of the predictions that Oklahoma has gotten, but today we got to talk about some more updates that have came out of this elite junior day for the Oklahoma Sooners. And now that the coaches are back on the road again, I have a feeling Oklahoma could close in on a couple targets. Before we do that, as always, I want to hear from y'all, so make sure you join the discussion. Jump down in the comments below. We're going to be covering recruiting content all season for you. So if you're new to the channel or you've been watching the channel for a while, make sure you hit that subscribe button. This information is completely free, and all you have to do is hit the subscribe button, and I can continue to bring you guys great content like this. But today I really want to start off with talking about Kevin Ford Jr. once again, and we're not going to spend a ton of time here because we had a whole video dedicated to his prediction to the Oklahoma Sooners, but a 6'3", 225-pound defensive end out of Duncanville High School, again, would be a massive win for the Oklahoma Sooners if they're able to get him out of Duncanville. But remember, this is not a school that Oklahoma's had really any success, maybe outside of Savion Byrd before. So Oklahoma has to do major work here in schools like SMU, in Texas, in-state schools that he's taken quite a few visits to and continuing to push for him are going to be a problem for Oklahoma. Not to mention, Texas has a guy by the name of Colin Simmons, who was the five-star defensive end out of the last cycle that ultimately ended up showing out for Texas this year. But Oklahoma's in a good spot for him. Now, I did follow up with him after his visit, and this is kind of what he was able to tell me kind of going into his visit. He says it went good. Placed them with everybody else. And when he says that, I think it's just kind of like, hey, like my recruitment's still open. But I definitely feel like Oklahoma is probably the leader in the clubhouse at this point in time. I did ask, kind of about the prediction, if he's working on narrowing down the list of schools. He says right now it's pretty open, but he's going to hopefully get that narrowed down after the spring. And you would imagine with the amount of times Kevin Ford's been on campus, he'll probably be back on campus again at sometime this spring, maybe for the spring game. Kevin Ford Jr., it feels like he loves him some Oklahoma. But he'll be taking a visit to Alabama on February 1st. So we're going to kind of see what the Kalen DeBoer staff can do out there. But going on to the three-star wide receiver, Aljor Miles out of Kaufman, Texas. Now, if you guys have watched this channel, you guys have watched me over on Jay's channel at Unfair Sports. You guys know how much I like me some Aljor Miles. I think he's a really good prospect. I think the way you saw people talk about Emmanuel Choice in this past class, I think is the same way we're going to be talking about Aljor Miles in this class. Super athletic kid, 6'3", I think right at about 200 pounds. This is a guy that right now he's only a three-star, but I definitely foresee him kind of jumping into that four-star territory, especially maybe before the season starts, and definitely by the end of the season, I think being a top 250 player in the country. He's been to Oklahoma, like, I think 4 or 5 times at this point. So Aljor Miles, got a chance to catch up with him after the visit. And quite frankly, just, simple question. I kind of asked everybody, like, how did the visit go? And he said the visit was great. Once again, and OU is easily top 3 in his recruitment. I did ask, hey, what schools outside of Oklahoma are really pushing the hardest for you? He said USC, Texas Tech, SMU, Stanford, Northwestern. They're all kind of pushing really hard. The big thing is although the offer list for Aljor Miles doesn't seem super competitive right now, I do think towards the end of the cycle, like when in-state schools like A&M and Texas start to be missing out on some of these recruits, kind of like they did this year, I think you're going to see them circle back to Aljor Miles, realizing they have a really good wide receiver in their state that maybe they'll want to try to lock in. So keep your eyes on that one. But again, I wanted to ask, hey, do you kind of have a timeline on that commitment? Any current other visits, currently planned? He says he'll be committing after he finishes all of his OVs in the summer. Right now, he has only SMU and Kansas scheduled for an OV. So we'll kind of have to watch kind of what Aljor Miles is going to do. It's important to know Oklahoma was one of the first schools to go in there and offer him. Emma Jones has a really good relationship there. So keep your eyes out on Aljor Miles. That's not the wide receiver I think that could commit to Oklahoma, though. We'll talk about that one towards the end. I did get a chance to catch up with Dejon Akerson, and he is the all-around, I'm just going to call him an athlete out of Putnam City. And currently right now, not ranked with any of the sides, but that possibly could change. So coming in at 6 foot, 170 pounds, or at least it's where On3 has him currently ranked. This was an important one because I don't think we really know a lot about him. So asked him about the visit, right? The visit was good. He would say they're one of the top schools right now. Diving into the recruitment a little bit, he kind of talked about how they're recruiting him at linebacker. Brandon Hall is one of the main recruiters there. So kind of looking at it, understanding Oklahoma doesn't have a linebackers coach. Brandon Hall's recruiting him. Kind of made me wonder down the trail, like, is this a guy that Oklahoma could see playing at Cheetah down the road? But he says, besides the schools that have offered him, he's starting to pick up a little interest from Kansas. So those would be the schools that are kind of really pushing for him. And then I asked him, the simple question, hey, like, you're an Oklahoma kid. Did you grow up loving OU? Did you grow up loving OSU? Because that's normally what you see with kids in the state, right? He had a pretty intriguing answer to this. He said, I've never really chose between the two from me growing up in Perkins, right outside of Stillwater, and having friends liking OSU and my dad and his people like OU. So I would just go for whoever won that year. That's a really good way to put it, right? Because, if you start to link, hey, I really like this school, people start to connect the dots, like, with Caden Jones. People, I think, want to just pencil Caden Jones in to Oklahoma's class, but I don't think it's 100% written in stone that Caden Jones can land in this class. Like, Caden Jones, there's always the possibility that he could land out of the state if he wanted to. And he's kind of tried to operate in that narrative. So I thought he answered the question really well. It'd be interesting to see if Oklahoma could go out there and get a guy like DJ Akerson, who's an in-state prospect. But kind of looking at who I think Oklahoma could be closing in. So obviously the staff's out on the trail. They're visiting all the top targets. You saw Miguel Chavis out there once again with Jake Krull. That picture's floating around all over Twitter. Jake Krull, one of the top defensive end prospects in the country. I still think they're going to get back out to Duncanville again, right? It only makes sense as a school you probably want to have a consistent presence in. They constantly turn out really good players, especially in the state of Texas. And Kevin Ford is one of the best defensive ends in the country. So if you're Oklahoma, you definitely want him. And again, like, this whole conversation is kind of centered around Kevin Ford. Like, when is he going to commit? When is that timeline going to happen? Because I think that's what Oklahoma fans really want to know. So kind of looking at the wide receiver that I think we could be seeing drop early is Jabari Brady, a guy that's played with Jaden O'Neal and some of these 7-on-7s, kind of came out here to Oklahoma. Now, the big news is, though, here, you're having to battle some really elite schools and some NIL schools for a wide receiver like Jabari Brady's talent. I mean, Miami, Ohio State, Florida State, Georgia's trying to get in there, right? And he's from the state of Florida and Fort Lauderdale. So it's going to be a hard win for Oklahoma. But this is one, after seeing Odom end up committing to Oklahoma, I definitely could see Jabari Brady down the road committing here, maybe even sooner rather than later, just based off kind of some things that I've heard. So, yeah, we'll see on there. So I want to hear from y'all. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Which one of these targets do you want Oklahoma to go out there and land? If you guys are new to the channel, make sure you guys hit that like, hit that subscribe button. And as always, make sure you guys wipe your feet. Sub to the channel because we're going to be doing recruiting content all off season long.